I'm your host, Nahaja Black. I hope that everyone is enjoying themselves today. Breaking news out of the office of the Prime Minister. We have been told that it has been confirmed that the office of the Prime Minister, we have both the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, um, were sent into quarantine uh, just out of precaution due to the office of the Prime Minister being exposed to COVID-19. So that has been an interesting bit of breaking news that we'll get into later on in the show. But actually, no, it will be a part of this entire show today. Just the effects of COVID-19, what it has done, what it continues to do, the impact that we all are facing right now due to COVID-19, and how it is affecting just everyday business here in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Special guests today. Looking forward to the show today, jam-packed with two strong guests. Leading off the show today is none other than the CEO of the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Jeffrey Beckles. He'll be joining us right at the start of the show. And then coming up at 5 o'clock, former Minister of Health, Dr. Duane will be joining us at 5 o'clock as well. So we've got a full show for you today. So without further ado, I'm very excited. My good friend, he's the big boss now, but he always was. I met Mr. Beckles. He was always the chief of something, somewhere. So it's a pleasure to have him on the show. Jeff, how are you?
I'm well. Good afternoon, Nahaja, and good afternoon, Bahamas. It's great to be here. Always a pleasure, and one of your greatest fans. So it's good to be with you today.
Listen, well, with a friend saying that, I have to now. When the best time for you to tell me this, Jeff, is when we can't go to lunch. I just want you to know that, so I don't owe you anything.
There's always a strategy, right? But it's good to be with you.
It's good to be here. I'm glad that you're with us today. Listen, I'm excited that you're here today because we have so much important things to discuss, right? We are, and I've said it so many times on the show, it's become this broken record. We're just in a crazy time. We are with the world facing challenges that no country, maybe apart from Malaysia and Singapore and China, who are used to these type of viral outbreaks, have experienced. But based on the way that Singapore and Malaysia, and even their best efforts, they have seen fallbacks. So you see New Zealand finding itself looking to go back into mitigation protocols and locking down again. Jamaica, I think Prime Minister Holness today, after going weeks without any major upheaval, found themselves with 30 new cases in one day due to a traveler, a resident traveling and coming back. And today we'll make an announcement on more stringent protocols. This is affecting economies globally around the world, some worse than others. And Jeff, one of the challenges that we face, not one of, but the many challenges that we face, the main one is how deep the economic crater has become here in the Bahamas. And the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce is seen as the place where ideas are brought to, the think tanks work together, the strategies are put together, and ways that you can look at the economy are fashioned. So today, Jeff, I got to ask you the first question out of the box, out of the gate, hard question out of the gate. What are we supposed to do in the next 6 to 12 months to get ourselves out of this economic disarray?
Wow, it's a loaded question. What do we do? I'll start by saying this, and yes, I agree. These are unprecedented times. There's really no benchmark through to which we turn to find the solution. But I think it then provides us one of the better opportunities we would have had as a country in learning how to work through these ginormous challenges. And that is the ability to be very nonpartisan, very steady-minded, and very focused on the things that we need to do. And yes, you're right. How do we get what's the strategy for the next 5 or 6 months? And as I said to one of my colleagues yesterday, we are going to have to learn how to be adaptive and creative at the same time. This country does not lack knowledge. experience, in fact, world class experiences. We have a very educated workforce, right? We have a lot of talent in the country. I think this is an opportunity for the country to really look at, finally, at this big question: what's in the best interest of the country, and how do we create this conversation that puts that as our number one objective?
Mm-hmm.
Nonpartisan, non-religious, non-sect, non-ethnic, but what's good for the country. I believe we have the capacity to do that. Now, whether or not we're prepared to do it at this time is the other question, but it can be done. And that being said, we now have to turn to thinking more adaptively, because as we have been told, COVID's going to be with us for a long time.
Yeah.
So we do know this. We can't keep knee-jerking or reacting. We have to now adapt to that reality. And since we already accepted the fact that COVID's going to be with us for a while, it means then that we've already accepted that people are going to continue to get sick.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't keep reverting to, to extreme measures if we've already accepted that fact.
Yeah. Jeffrey Beckles here, CEO of the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce. When you say adaptive, Jeff, what do you mean by that? What do you mean in terms of being adaptive? And then how do you translate that to smaller businesses or older businesses that are challenged with doing the same?
Well, let me see if I can put it in a very simple example. In that, okay, right now we're in the middle of a lockdown that's affecting lots of businesses. If we took that reality that COVID's going to be with us for a while, and we know that, yes, we got to wear a mask, yes, we got to wash our hands and sanitize and clean a little bit more often, etc. Fine, those are things that we must do. But but should we then not be creating the new narrative, the new policy, the new guidelines that includes those things, while at the same time we're taking note of the need to have some spread mitigation efforts, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we combine all of those without having to shut down the complete economy as often as we would projecting, right?
Right.
So that we can, one, keep some life in the economy. We still need people to be working. We still need people to be paying their taxes. We need to be able to reduce the number of people that are going to have to rely on our social safety net. So all of these things have to be a part of the conversation collectively, while at the same time having great regard for what the health community is saying about the impact of this virus on our health. So the point is, long and short of it, we can't have a lopsided approach. We have to have a more balanced approach that's inclusive of some restrictions, but
Mm-hmm.
restrictions that will allow us to continue to develop a normal pattern of life, realizing that this is an evolving environment that we're in.
Yeah. For smaller businesses, earlier before COVID-19, we had businesses, older businesses, right? I'm trying to remember the electrical company. It was an older business on Shirley Street, and they had to close down.
Oh, yeah, Taylor Industries.
Taylor Industries, that's
Right.
it. And I remember thinking, what did it move to become, or was it able to transition itself from a business that is entrenched and well known and beloved into one that was current? And I always said, well, the challenge is, how do you get older businesses to now know that they must become a 2020 or 21st century business in terms of accessibility, it not just being brick and mortar? How do we get some of those exported dollars to stay home? And I wonder, because I'm looking at businesses now, Jeff, and I find that it is hard for a lot of businesses to make the change from brick and mortar to a digital presence, and trying to figure out, how do we receive funds through this digital presence? Is it too hard for businesses to make that change here in our economy?
Well, no, it's not too hard. And let me just go beyond the point of a Taylor Industries without knowing all of their internal challenges, right? But it's a good place to start. Then let me go back to the pandemic, which is very current. More than half of the existing businesses in the Bahamas were not able to pivot, to move to an electronic platform or digital platform in 2020. Now, when you and yes, you may find that there are some legacy businesses, but many younger businesses were not able to do that. The reality of it, though, is as Bahamian businesses begin to rethink business strategies, we have to think about those not only in the context of the borders within the Bahamas in which we live, we have to think about them in a global context. Because if you do that, and when we do that, we would appreciate the fact that this trek toward digitization didn't just start last year or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. It started decades ago. And we were, in some respects, other countries just like ours were lulled to sleep about that reality. Now, COVID has helped to reveal, okay, not to introduce, but to
Reveal.
reveal the gap between our readiness and our reality. So it's not while it is challenging, it's not impossible. While it is challenging, if businesses intend to be viable, not just in the Bahamas, but be viable, period, then we must embrace the opportunity to first case, to learn what is required to have my business transformed into a digital space. You may never be offer an online service, depending on the business you're in, but that doesn't mean that you can't conduct your business online, right?
Online, yeah.
And so whether it's banking or whatever, how long have we been talking about banking? So I think part of it is that we were lulled to sleep by the fact that we were doing well. I'm gonna say
Yeah.
well in brackets,
Well,
right?
and definitely.
Yeah, okay. That we were okay, right? And then all of a sudden, somebody came and changed the rules. And 48% of businesses found themselves struggling to open, because it wasn't about whether or not you could do curbside or not. It was about whether or not you were ready to actually do that. Now,
Yeah.
we have joined partners at the Chamber with several of our local partners, particularly the Cable Bahamas. We just did a webinar today on digital transformation for SMEs, and this is our third in a series of 6. We're providing free education, free introductions to business owners as to what's required and why it is necessary for you to now take your business to a digital platform, with a view that when you prepare today's business plan, your business plan is incomplete unless you have a digital component to your plan.
Yes. You know, one of the things, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black on Guardian 96.9 FM. CEO of the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce, Jeffrey Beckles, on the show with us. And we're also streaming live on YouTube. You can type in Nahaja Black and you'll see the channel there. And you can follow and watch us live, subscribe, share, like, you know, all of that good stuff. Jeff, one of the things that, you know, I look at it and I've been saying it for a long time, and I'm excited. This is a weird thing to say, right? It's a weird thing to say. But I believe that there's always opportunities in crisis.
Yes.
And I believe that this crisis is forcing us to view business from a digital space. And I wonder, at this point, how viable, well, first of all, how important is it that we get business owners to realize that any business can be in a digital space? Because I don't think many people believe that their business can exist in a digital space.
Well, I think what is clear is that we're not going back to what we had in January of 2020. That those days are gone, and right before our eyes, they're gone. And while many businesses continue to struggle, and they are struggling in this country, part of it is the responsibility does lie with business owners to recognize how much the business landscape has changed globally, and more particularly here in the Bahamas, and what is required to adjust that. To that. Now, does that mean too that every business will accept that and adjust? We're hoping that most businesses say yes, but all of them won't survive this thrust. But businesses, to your point, must be able to understand that this is our reality, right? But it also doesn't only mean that we must now look at how we do business in the Bahamas. We have to look at all the things that support good business in the Bahamas. We have to look at how we govern as a people, because a lot of the exposure that we're going through right now with COVID aren't issues that just came about because of COVID.
Right.
They're all along, right? In
Right.
the medical field, they call it underlying conditions, right? So it's going to change the perspective of how we interact with government and policies and what it is, how we interact with them going forward. It's also going to take a look at some of the underlying issues in our administrative and structural weaknesses that have been identified for decades on end. So it's going to involve us taking a holistic look at how business is done in the Bahamas so that we are able to change. Because if we change only from the way we operate our business and operate in the same environment we've always had, you're
Then,
basically back to square one.
oh, I love that. No, that's a great point. That's a great point. So it's not just saying, okay, I have a web presence. It's
Yes.
saying now I need to learn how to work in this digital space. How do I transition my business and leverage it more into this space? How do I now look at, well, let me ask you this question, because when you said that, it made me think, Jeff. We have this digital currency that the central bank is supposed to be working on. I think it's the sand dollar.
Yes.
Uh, Currency. Well, it is supposed to be the equivalent of the Bahamian currency, just in the digital realm. Where does the chamber view? How does the chamber view that sand dollar digital currency? It's not a cryptocurrency. The central bank wants us to know that very clearly. It's not a cryptocurrency. It is the Bahamian dollar in a digital space, right? So transaction wise. How does the Chamber of Commerce look at that that option or that vehicle and say, hey, business owners in the Bahamas, you can benefit from this? Or are you guys saying this is something that we can't determine, or we're not able to tell you right now where the benefit lies?
Well, it is a good initiative that the bank has embarked on, and we certainly give them a lot of credit for it. It is in some cases visionary, and certainly some things that we should have been trying to do for a long time. The impact of it, obviously, is going to be the timing of COVID and all the post-Dorian environment that we're in. The overall impact may take a while to flesh out, but by and large, it is a very good initiative that I believe will have yield some good rewards for the country in the long term.
Someone says that this digital space has one of the best things about this digital space is that this is what they've been preaching for years.
Yeah.
And COVID-19 now has really pushed their message forward by leaps and bounds, and they would like to thank the bat that gave us COVID-19, which is a weird decision.
Thank the bat.
To
Okay.
thank the bat, right?
When I see him, I'll let him know. But you know, the point is, yes, the conversation about digital transformation is now at the forefront. Mm-hmm. But to your earlier point, this crisis is also producing opportunity, right? Because we have tons of Bahamians involved in the digital space at varying levels, because technology is multifaceted, right? So while it creates an opportunity for entrepreneurs and professionals in that space, but it also creates an extraordinary educational component as well, because we have to fill the educational gap in the technology space, right? So there's an opportunity there that's going to come out of this. Then you look at, for instance, how education is being delivered in the Bahamas. All of a sudden now, we're no longer talking about strengthening our educational system. Now we have a different component to look at. How are we going to actually deliver education in this new environment? So now our problem has now been compounded, because we've been trying for years to fix our educational system. Now we have to deal with the delivery of it. But at the same time, it's providing an opportunity for people to engage in meaningful work, in meaningful careers that are now coming out of this environment. Why did I want to go there? I wonder, because I go back to something that we were talking about earlier, about how we'll have to change our perspective, not only in how we do business, but how we engage government, right? Because what has to happen, Nahaja, is that policies, laws, and rules have to now also be adjusted to accommodate this new environment.
Yes.
We've been talking about law reform and the need for law reform and clarity in some of our laws for decades. Well, this is part of that conversation that has to now also take place. So what does that do? That creates another opportunity for those in the legal space, right, to start looking from a global perspective, not just from the Bahamas, on our existing laws and how they need to be refined and updated and upgraded so that the entrepreneur, the legacy business, the new business, the SME, is now better able to conduct business well beyond the borders of the Bahamas in an open economy market.
What type of laws are you talking about here, Jeff? Give me an example. Let us get a sense of what type of laws now would be best reviewed with this changing economy.
I'll give you an example. We've been hearing a lot of talk about the hassles of registering a business in the Bahamas, the hassles of registering property, being able to get just a registrar's office alone, right? Mm-hmm. And the value that it plays in the business service chain, right? Making that easier, more accessible, more practical. Making sure that the registrar's office is able to function at its maximum level. What that does is it automatically speeds up all of these other issues. Then we know that we have some laws that are acts, some are practice.
That's right.
They need to be some of these practices and policies need to be enshrined in law so that it can be more attractive to investors who want to partner with Bahamians.
And consistent.
And be more consistent, right?
Very true.
If something is embedded as a practice, as a policy, I'm less likely to put my money on the line and take you to court based on policy, because policy could change tomorrow. But if it was embedded in law, right, then I have a greater chance of having my matter heard. So it's a matter of us looking at foreign registered businesses and how they're registered, how they're treated, and being able to get through that prism of being able to know that with a clarity that, look, I can do this in the Bahamas and satisfy myself. Why? As opposed to having to be worried whether or not somebody's going to change the rules on me in the middle of the game.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have more here with Jeffrey Beckles. We've got a few text messages, and you can feel free to call as well. I give the call numbers when we come back on the other side of the break. Call or text. Jeffrey Beckles, CEO of the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black right here on Guardian 96.9 FM.
Girl, Junior just showed me Bella Boy in his phone.
What you mean? He take picture of that good for nothing boy?
Shh, you don't want Bella hair. You say that. You know she always say that's my good child.
So what he doing in Junior phone?
Oh, he there because the police looking for him. He on their wanted list.
Wanted persons in your phone now?
Yes, child. And when police want to find anybody quick, after something happen, they can send picture direct to your phone. Go to Google Play or App Store and search for Crack Crime Bahamas, then pick install, and it will go straight to your phone.
There is also a section on missing persons.
Yes, girl. Everybody needs to get this app so police can tell us right away when these people go missing. Just like an alert system.
Yes, it has numbers for Crime Stoppers Bahamas, so you can call and nobody knows it's you. Call directly to Miami and give the information without giving your name or anything about you. I tried the other day, and when I hear Junior and his boys talking about where they hide those guns, I walk quick around the corner and call that number.
Call 328-8477 from Nassau or 242-300-8477 from the Family Islands.
Good afternoon. Traffic look now. There is no traffic activity for this lockdown Tuesday. It's on target. Virtually empty streets are across the island. Very light traffic movement is out there that can be attributed to the essential workers and workers that must be out there keeping the government's machinery operable. So at this time, there are no congestions or delays to be concerned about. No such thing going on. In fact, several streets have no movement or activity at all. Yesterday, with some of the essential businesses open, the morning commute had a slow start, but by midday and mid-afternoon, the inner cities were heavily laden with bumper to bumper traffic that lasted late into the evening, to the point of making it very challenging to sufficiently empty the streets in time for the 5 o'clock curfew. But it's a different day, and this Tuesday lockdown, mandated by the competent authority, can claim success. National Traffic reported the service of radiator specialists, reminding you, avoid standby generators that are running hot during this hurricane season. Fix, recall, and repair those radiators today. before they start. Call Radio Specialist at 356-6943. That's 356-6943. With your eye in the sky look at traffic and VA-double-N, keeping an eye on what's going on in the streets so you know exactly what to expect out there. Back in an hour with an update.
Jen and Jason are prepping for the hurricane season at home. Is their insurance enough? They messaged their Massey United Insurance rep to have a chat. Recent renovations increased their property value. They were underinsured. Now their coverage is updated. Be Massey United Insurance ready this hurricane season. Call RMS Insurance Agents and Brokers at 698-7233. Shield Insurance Agents and Brokers at 356-7202 or Freeport Insurance Agents and Brokers at 352-8501 to learn more.
It's the beginning of the hurricane season, and Fidelity Bank is giving you one less thing to worry about. We're not able to control a storm or its path, but we can prepare for it as much as possible. With every debt consolidation loan, Fidelity is giving away fully loaded hurricane kits valued at $200 with all the hurricane essentials you'll need to weather the unexpected storms of life. It's that easy. Sign up for a debt consolidation loan, open an ASUS savings or fixed deposit, and walk away with a free hurricane kit. At Fidelity, we're committed to helping you through these difficult times. Fidelity, we're good for you.
This is Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Jeffrey Beckles in studio with us, CEO. Well, is this? I'm so used to saying in studio. On air with us as we are live via Zoom and YouTube. So you can feel free to follow us live on YouTube as well. You can text us. You can call us 323-6232, 325-4316, or 325-4259. That's 323-6232. 325-4316 or 325-4259. And you can also text at 422-4796. That's 422-4796. Jeff, again, thank you so much for joining us today, my friend. And I know that you're a busy man. If anything, you are everywhere all the time trying to be as available as possible. Before we get to, and I want to make sure that I'm not keeping anyone on hold here, but I got a few texts I want to read.
Sure.
Do you think the lockdown after is the way to go? Lockdown after lockdown is the way to go in this country because things aren't getting any better for the small business people in our country. What is the commission? I'm sorry, you can tell that I've been involved with too many things, and I have a commission meeting after. What would you think? What is the chamber's position on the lockdowns?
Our view is that obviously the short answer to the question is no. This can't be the perpetual response because it's not going to do businesses any good. Businesses are under extreme hardship by this. But that goes back to what I started to say earlier about taking a more adaptive approach, understanding how do we strike the balance between the what has been said, the permanency of COVID and the reality of the fact that we have to live, right? And we have to live, we have to conduct business, our children have to go to school, our social lives have to be restored because of the impact is affecting all of those areas of life. So we have to become more adaptive in our strategy long-term. We can't just keep, there's no doubt, we cannot sustain opening, closing, opening and closing. That is not going to be the answer. There's no country that has been able to show where that they've been able to survive that. And we don't want to be the first.
Jeffrey Beckles again, Guardian 96.9. Jeff, how much does the chamber know how much money has been lost by small businesses thus far?
We do not know that number as yet. Obviously, we will be able to pick that up from company filings through the Department of Inland Revenue, and those statistics we'll get eventually. But I can say this, businesses at every level are taking a huge financial hit. Many businesses, some have closed, many businesses are on the verge, under significant pressure. And this is why I believe that we have to begin to start a conversation about what else do we need to be doing. In this whole conversation, though, there has to be there are several components. One, personal responsibility, right? Which is a big issue right now, right? In many countries, not peculiar to the Bahamas, but we live here. And so my point is there's personal responsibility. Then there's a corporate responsibility for those of us who have and are affiliated with businesses. How do we bring to the top those initial primary needs? What is it going to take for us to work collaboratively to keep our businesses opening and operating, keeping people employed? How do we do that? And then to be able to engage with policymakers at a level where they first understand the impact on the economy and understand the impact on the unemployment numbers, which will eventually translate to increased numbers on the social platform, on the social network, and then the other side of the social fallout, the impact it's going to have on families. So there's room for any number of sectors to get involved in this conversation.
You know, an initiative that the ministry had, the government had put in place at the beginning was the small business loan. Yes. And I was trying to recall, and I didn't have enough time to go through and search the archives to find out what the Chamber's position is or has been on that initiative. And what recommendations would you give Bahamian businesses? Is there a tier? Whom would you say should take this loan versus not?
Well, the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce is a founding partner of the SPDC, right? And we have been working very closely with the SPDC. They've distributed, had more than $20 million that have been distributed. The reality of it is every business ought to be prepared to access whatever grants or loans that are available with a view of helping it sustain its operations. What we are seeing more so now than ever before is that the combination of government stimulus along with the SPDC's programs have played an integral role in allowing a lot of these businesses to still be open today. Now, does it mean, though, that we have to go back to the well and find more money? That's what we're trying to ensure. That's why we're trying to ensure that businesses stay open, that the economy stays open, that we can continue to turn over some dollars. We know that our economy is only so big domestically, right? And it can only take so much. But at least, though, the Chamber has been on the forefront of working with the SPDC, working with the government, the Ministry of Finance, to ensure that the stimulus packages were refined. And yes, they weren't necessarily, well received in the first iterations, but we kept working with the Ministry of Finance from the private sector perspective to streamline them and make them a lot more appropriate and more receptive. And we've had many companies have taken advantage of that. By the same token, the Chamber has continued to play its part in working with the Competent Authority, working with the policymakers to ensure that after the pronouncements are made by the Competent Authority, that we do our part to get businesses opened in as short as possible time. And we continue to do that even up to the time that I came onto your show. We're still talking, representing the interests of businesses and presenting cases as to why they ought to be permitted to open, as long as they can demonstrate the capacity to meet the medical requirements and keeping the public safety interests very high on their agenda, and be able to conduct their businesses. So we continue to do that.
Something that you said, and I wanted to get clarity. Are you saying that 20 million has been spent for the small business loan since COVID?
Between Grand Bahama, Abaco, Nassau, it's been about that. Yes, it's been about
really?
That much. Yeah.
Just in these few months. Okay.
Yes.
And what would you suggest? What would be the suggestion on how businesses are best to use these funds? Are we telling them, because if your business is closed through the majority of this time, is it just paying overhead? What what adjustments are businesses being advised to do so that when these lifts, these timelines have been removed and we get some sense of normalcy or a new normal with mitigation factors and we're told to adjust, what are we suggesting to these businesses on how to use this funds?
Well, every business needs different, but our initial objective was to provide some grant funding and low interest loans to enable businesses to, in the first instance, be able to keep people employed, keep their businesses open, keep their businesses afloat. While some of those businesses were also encouraged to make adjustments to their work weeks as well. Look at how you can streamline your expenses. And it may have even included, rather than offering your employees a 40-hour work week, you may only be able to offer them a 30 to 35-hour work week, right? Keep some income coming because, again, in this environment, local revenues started to shrink because of lockdowns and other restrictions. So what we were saying to businesses was first apply, get the support for your business, and then begin to take advice, meet with your consultants, meet with your advisors, streamline your business expenses so that you prolong the ability for your business to stay open, while at the same time reviewing your business model to make sure that it is relevant for the environment we're working in. And a lot of it had to do with digital transformation. A lot of it had to do with rebranding and building websites and being able to offer services online as opposed to in the physical space. It involved businesses being able to pivot to do curbside delivery. So we were giving the advice to help businesses make that turn to transition to be able to operate in this changing environment. So it was kind of a multifaceted approach, realizing that every business need is different, but there were some things that were consistent to all. Get access by applying. Take a look at your business, how you can streamline your business operations because every dollar you can save can go toward keeping your doors open and keeping your employees retained for a little bit longer. That being said, the next phase of the discussion has to be what's going to be our strategy for the next 12 to 18 months. Businesses are anxious to know what that is nationally, and that's where we're putting a lot of our energy right now in trying to determine what's going to be that landscape, what's going to be the strategy for us to help businesses survive through this, and while we're surviving it, being able to keep our eyes on emerging needs so that we can help create new opportunities for businesses, some existing, some new, to get involved in the discussion about being entrepreneurs and being able to support our economy. We know that much like the region, Jamaica and all the other regional counterparts, we rely heavily on tourism. What do we need to do? What adaptations need to be made to be able to get tourists returning to our shores? We do know that it's going to take a while to build up our momentum again, especially after coming off a very strong 2018, a very strong 2019. We were on an extraordinary pace. It's going to take time. But while we're taking time to get back to get our legs underneath us, businesses in the tourism sector too are also being challenged to rethink, to re-examine what can we do with this business? How do we refine it? How do we now take our business model and really look at it very objectively and determine how we could be better? And as I said to one of my colleagues today, one of the greatest compelling questions for us in the Bahamas is how are we going to be different and better coming out of COVID?
Yeah, and I think that is going to be fascinating, especially for those industries that are very tourism dependent. And I think across all, in particular, countries that are tourism centric. I mean, you can look at Venice. Venice, as a sinking city in the world, it had complaints about tourists. So many tourists. I think it has about 70,000 residents, and it goes through about 10 million, 13 million visitors on annum. And they were talking about how environmentally the negative impacts of
they get overrun.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And now they're begging for tourists to come back, and most of them, their tourists come via cruise ships similar to ours. So we understand that there are parts of our industry. So I think about the jet ski operator. The jet ski operator is tourist dependent. He can't even get the local business because beaches are closed.
Right.
That particular business owner who has 10 jet skis has found that he is unemployed.
Right.
He has no business. And I don't see a way where he can pivot that business because he needs bodies. He actually needs human beings.
Yeah. He needs
So
customers.
he needs customers. And so there are businesses that cannot, I don't believe, are able to pivot, but just prepare.
Right.
How would you have that type of business prepare so that he isn't just waiting for guests, but that he or she is out there already booking guests? Like, how would you get them? How would the chamber, speak to those person saying you need to be in this space and you can come to this space so that you can prepare your business in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, we do offer quite a bit of advisory services. In fact, a lot of it we offer very free. So businesses in that space can actually call us and we would be happy to refer them. But it also, and to your point where in the case of the jet ski operator, he needs bodies. He needs bodies to be able to come, book his jet skis and get on them and pay their monies, and that's a ways off, and we know that. The reality of it is we will not be able to meet every single business need, but it doesn't mean though that that jet ski owner can't look at the way he operated his business and find new ways, innovative ways. He may not have ever picked up a computer, but guess what? He could figure out, how do I now be able to develop a digital platform to where I'm selling my jet ski online before the tourist even gets here. My money's in the bank.
That's right.
And when he walks up to me on the beach, because I told him this is where I am, he gives me his receipt, he gets his joy ride. The fact of the matter is there's room for every single business to take a look at more innovative ways that they can run their businesses. And also, let's face it, we have to also be minded that technology doesn't fix all of our business. What do I mean by that? Every business has an opportunity to examine its customer experience portfolio. You still need customers.
Still need customers.
And customers still have to have a good experience with you. Take a look at how you are delivering your business. Jet skis, as you mentioned them, have been a hard hit sector for a long time. Well, isn't this a great opportunity for the jet ski operator to sit and take some real good advice, analyze how he delivered his product against what people have been writing about them over the years, and be the one to lead in this space, so that as you come out of this, people are still going to be able to want to ride jet skis because the salt water ain't going nowhere.
That's true.
But you can become the industry leader in the way you present, in the way your staff are trained, in the way your equipment is presented, and in the way you treat your customers and handle your customers, in the way you're able to take customers' bookings online and take their payments online and provide them confirmation that they have booked an hour-long jet ski with us for when they come to Nassau again. So
I think
that's the beauty of it.
I think we have a caller, Kermit, if we still have the call on the line. Caller, you're on the hit back. Welcome.
Hello, dear guest, Nahaja.
How are you, Braben?
I'm holding, thank God.
Good.
I have a question and a comment for Jeff. Now, he was describing the law being fixed, right? Or whereby other people all of the country would come in and be comfortable, so to speak, right? Now, for the Bahamians to stay on a good footing, if the government were to fix the law for international people, do the Constitution have to be tweaked whereby we would still be on good footing?
Well, it depends on what aspect of the law we're going to change. Let me just make this point about the law. If you look at one of the challenges as to why we rate so poorly in our ease of doing business ranking in the world is the lack of clarity in our laws, right?
What law would you want to be fixed?
Oh, there's a whole myriad of them that needs to be fixed. So I'd be happy to.
Thanks, Raymond.
We've
have
been
to do
working on
another
that
show.
for a while. There are many of them. But when we start talking about ease of doing business and our attractiveness to the world, as I said earlier, those are some of the things that we also have to fix, because if we don't fix them, and you could come up with all the new innovative ideas you want, if you go back to the same environment you had, what's the net gain? So yeah, one of the things that we've been plagued with our ease of doing business ranking globally is that there's a lack of clarity in our laws.
Let me ask you something, Jeff. I'm surprised by how many businesses that are here, the big businesses, small businesses, that the ability for Bahamians to receive funds from international transactions is still so difficult.
Yes.
And using commonly worldwide used gateways such as PayPal, we are still challenged. Bahamians still have to go ahead and open up a US bank account and hope that they can receive their funds. And if they don't do the setting correctly, which I know the central bank doesn't feel very good about happening, that there's still some challenges. I think that's ridiculous, especially when we're talking about wanting Bahamians to be vacation home renters,
right?
Wanting us to go into that digital space and becoming a part of the tourism product. And again, even looking at when, and I'm putting this in air quotes too, when we open up and allow Uber to be used in the country and not protect these lobby bodies, but I digress. Why is it that the Chamber of Commerce hasn't made that sort of major push to get that one major thing, but simple thing done for the majority of Bahamians?
Well, we have been working with the National Ease of Doing Business Committee from day one. But I think it goes back to the point that I made earlier. When we talk about law reform and clarity, we can't emerge from this better able to participate in a global commerce space if these things are left unchecked. Right. And so what has happened now that we have this global challenge, it's now opening up our view to the fact that all the other things that need to be looked at and aligned, because if we emerge from this pandemic with only the ability to be better domestically, we have not made progress.
We've not made progress.
Not at all.
Not at all.
We have to move to make progress on the global stage, which means that the issues like you just mentioned, the inability to receive funds in just jurisdiction via a PayPal, whatever those impediments are, they need to be viewed with a view of liberalizing them.
And urgently.
What do we need to do to open that floodgate? Yes. And much like I said earlier, if we go back to the ease of doing business, we didn't just know we had challenges with ease of doing business in 2018 or 2019. We've known those things for many, 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 many years. And in many people's view, those are some of the things that have kept the economy a bit more hostage and not allowed it to be fluid.
And I think restricted innovation too. A lot of these handcuffs limits even our ability to see. And so if you are liberating a market, and I see my neighbors doing transactions on eBay, or I see the junkanua himself knowing how to sell his product, his wares without a conduit, these are the things that will inspire another person to say, well, I can do this too. What do we have that I can offer to the global market? And we stop feeling so insignificant and without value. We have another call on the phone. Let's take this caller real quick. Caller, you're on the head back. Welcome. Hi, caller, you're on the air. Hi, caller, you're on the air. Welcome.
Yes, good afternoon. How you doing, Nahaja?
Doing well, my friend.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Jeff. How you doing?
Great, thanks.
Okay, good afternoon to the nation. I was just saying earlier, and I was forced to call in after I thought about it, and I wasn't going to. But because I didn't want to introduce any indifference to the conversation. But I was forced to after I thought about it for a while. And I want to point out, Nahaja, and to the nation that, for instance, BFS, right? Perhaps one of the biggest companies operating globally right here in our country, right? Or the parent company to BFS, Cisco, right? John Bull, Cable Bahamas, Atlantis, Bahama, RBC, Scotiabank, Sandals, Breezes. These are the Bahamas' Fortune 50, Fortune 10, and Fortune 5 companies. These companies have always been operating using information technology. These companies have always been operating using cutting-edge technologies. These companies are the leading or amongst the leading and most successful Bahamian companies. Yet, they have had to reduce staff by 10, 15, maybe even 20% in one or two instances. And where others didn't reduce staff, they have staff on furlough And it's yet to be determined if those companies will let off 10%, 15 or 20% of their staff after their furlough ends. And so I'm making this point to make the simple point that, Jeff, I disagree with your premise as it relates to information technology and companies going out of business because they are unable to make the turn. I completely disagree with it. As a matter of fact, it's large and in part due to piss poor policy and piss poor and ill-informed and not well thought out policy by the government of the Bahamas and how it is managing the ill effects and trying to and being unsuccessful in mitigating the fallout from its ill-advised and ill-thought-out policies relating to shutting the borders, relating to shutting this sector of operations in our country and allowing this sector of operations to maintain. The government has a major responsibility to bear as it relates to a lot of these businesses going out of business, Jeff. That is just a bottom line. And the fact, when you look at the fact that the companies that can most afford to sustain its staff are those very ones that are letting go of its staff, that tells you a lot within itself, Jeff. And so I would hope that you would conduct a further and a better analysis on what's really going on and level that down to the status of the mom and pop stores, because if these...
I gotta go, Anton. I appreciate the commentary, my boy, but I have to go because we're running out of time. Jeff, you want to respond to that quickly because I have a few texts before our segment
very
ends.
quickly. The caller should recognize that we are fact-based, and I don't say anything that is not fact-based. And obviously, he has not been able to provide any facts to support his position. I understand he's passionate about it, but passion doesn't translate into fact. We engage with businesses and we understand their inabilities to get moving and get going, and we understand why. And I don't think any of our conversation today has suggested that, in fact, quite the contrary, because we did say it's inclusive. The challenges we face economically are inclusive and not exclusive. So it requires all levels and all sectors being involved in the solutions.
Jeff, thank you so much.
We can talk about those thoughts some more. Yeah.
You know, most definitely. And listen, we have to do this again because this is a continuing story.
By all means.
Right? And as we continue in this, I'm looking forward to hearing and I'm sure you're on Jeffrey Beckles, CEO of the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce. I'm sure you're on the Economic Recovery Committee, and I just missed the name. But I'm looking forward to what we will learn further down the line, because we're excited about the new opportunities, and we haven't even discussed the domestic expansion with our tourist dollars. So there's something we definitely need to chime in, but we will do this again very soon.
You're listening. You again.
Thank you so much.
Here. Yes.
You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Jeffrey Beckles on air with us via Zoom. If you missed any part of the show, go to youtube.com. We will stream live there. And of course, you can go to the Guardian website. You can download even the Guardian app and watch us live there. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black. When we come back, Dr. Duane Sands will be joining us in the building. We'll be back after this.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
You're listening to the Guardian News Network at
Nassau, or 242-300-8477 from the Family Islands.
Tired of banks forcing you to use technology to bank the way they want you to? Your convenience is important. So no matter what your banking needs, Commonwealth Bank's friendly staff are always available in branch for that personal one-on-one service. But when you choose technology, our online and mobile banking app offers you state-of-the-art functionality. The choice is yours. Commonwealth Bank. Bank the way you want.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
Good afternoon, Bahamas, and welcome to the Hit Back. You're back. Well, I don't know why I said it that way. I mean, it isn't like I just started the show. Welcome everybody to the Hit Back. I'm excited to have my, I don't know if you say brother from another mother. It's just too familiar, but I love him like a brother, I think, kind of. First of all, I have to say this. Congratulations on the new, being a new dad to the one and only Dr. Duane Sands. Doc, congrats.
Thank you very much.
How's the sleeping going?
If you can figure out a way to fix that problem or that little challenge, then hey, we in like Flint.
No, right? That little one, we're good to go. Man, it's good to have you on the show, man. You've been missed. Funny thing is they miss you when you're gone, eh, Doc? Isn't that just the irony of life? They miss you when you're gone.
Well, I think few people anticipated that we would have this twist and turn. So here we are, and the question is now what do we do?
Did you anticipate the twist and turn though? Because if you're just tuning in, of course, former Minister of Health, Dr. Duane Sands, Member of Parliament for Elizabeth Estates, here on the Hit Back with us. You can watch us live on Zoom. You can also use the Guardian radio app to watch us as well. So this is really good to have you on, Doc. Where we are today, from the moment when you resigned, and we will talk about that because in recent bit of news, I think persons were like, well, we saw that coming. We knew that bit of information, but I'd like to get clarity on that. But from when we started this task force, from when we knew that COVID-19 was coming, one of the things that I keep reiterating on the show was what was the most poignant thing that you said throughout it all. Before we had our first case, you said it's not a matter of if, but when we will have our first case. And it was a definitive. And through the processes of us having our first case, shutting down the country, moving to phase 1A, to the new normal and all of this talk. How do you, at this point, did you see, after we had flattened what is considered, we had flattened the curve, did you see this second wave being as intense as it is now?
No, I don't think that we imagined, or I imagined, that it would be this severe. But the expectation was that this was not going to be a one-hit wonder, that COVID was going to be something that was here, and it was going to change our reality until such time as we either achieved herd immunity or there was a vaccine. So no matter what you did, lockdown, curfew, quarantine, contact tracing, etc., the expectation was that you could only coexist and mitigate until such time as you either had a very effective, widely available therapy or a vaccine, or you had enough people infected who survived who would then provide herd immunity to the population.
Which are we closer to at this point? I mean, we're looking at 39, I think it was 45 cases yesterday. 39 of them from Grand Bahama, the remaining from New Providence. Yeah, go ahead.
We are looking at a different epidemiologic situation in the different islands. Certainly, if you look at Grand Bahama, Bimini, New Providence, and then Berry Islands, and the other places where there have been confirmed cases of COVID. The reality epidemiologically is different in Grand Bahama than it is elsewhere. I believe that we have absolute community transmission in Grand Bahama.
Absolute.
Absolute.
Only. And when you say absolute, what does that mean? Only going to happen through community spread, or that we are so deeply infected?
This is not a cluster here, a cluster there. There is widespread community transmission, I believe, in Grand Bahama. And that is the reason why a population of 50,000 people has generated the number of confirmed cases comparable to the population of New Providence, which is almost, what, 5 times the size?
Yep.
And these are people, many of them, who have not traveled. These are people who, just working in the community, may have been infected at work, may have been infected at a restaurant, and so on and so forth. So it is disturbing what's happening, and suggests that certainly in Grand Bahama, there's widespread community transmission. The other thing that we have to point out is that when you have confirmed cases are not the total number of cases. And the expectation is that you can have as many as, and I'm not trying to frighten people or promote gloom and doom, as many as 10 times as many actual cases as confirmed cases, because you have to test widely in order to know what's out there. And we are absolutely not testing widely.
One of those things, if you're just tuning in, former Minister of Health, Dr. Duane Sands, let's talk about this testing. Before you left, that was one of the many cries of that Bahamians were asking for, and we're still asking for. Why aren't we testing in a wider space and more widely? One of the challenges that you found yourself having to resign over was the need for swabs, right? And that's a part of the testing process. Do we not have enough tests? Are we just insufficient in that area, or is it because we're just not considering that the right strategy?
Well, one of the things that I did before I left the ministry was to insist that the number of tests was made a part of the dashboard, because I thought it was an important metric to benchmark the performance of our public health system to the rest of the world. And so if you look at the high flyers, let's say the United Arab Emirates, that tests almost 500,000 per million. The United States, 200,000 per million. Barbados, 40,000 per million. The Bahamas is underperforming. And I thought it was very, very important for us who are now testing at around 16,000 or so per million, to understand that testing, contact tracing, hand washing, social distancing are all probably equal parts of the fight against COVID. And if you did not test enough, you would not know what you were dealing with. So before I left, the number of tests done was added to the dashboard.
Was it something?
Go ahead.
Was it something, because of course there wasn't adequate testing at that point when you were there as well? Was that a struggle for you? Was that something that you were continually requesting but weren't getting the traction that you felt you needed as Minister of Health?
We had huge challenges with the logistics of testing, because we oftentimes didn't have swabs. We had challenges with reagents. We had problems with extraction kits.
So it was just poor quality of goods, not an issue of purchasing?
No, the larger countries, the G20 countries, basically locked down all of the supplies that were available around the world. In the pre-COVID era, there was centralization of supplies, so that the place where the swabs made for RT-PCR testing, that place was in the part of Italy that was devastated by COVID.
Wow.
Sometime around March, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so the entire output of the specialized swabs for deep nasopharyngeal testing stopped. And so the only place where you could get it was in certain reference labs that had stockpiles, and they were not free enough for anybody. And so we looked at how to get 3D printing of nasopharyngeal swabs. We would beg, we would borrow, we didn't steal, but the gifts of nasopharyngeal swabs kept us in the game. And I will say categorically, were it not for donors who would have provided us with swabs, the principals at Cat Key, for instance, that gave us some 1,000 swabs. And the family, don't know their name, that ultimately was the focus of my demission from office. They kept the Bahamas in the fight.
You said something about donors from Cat Key. I think I'm surprised to hear that. So we had Cat Key donors with what type of equipment again?
They provided us with test kits for
how many, if you don't mind me asking?
Some 1,000, I believe it was about 1,000, very early on.
And is there any connection with us having cases in Cat Key?
Well, they were testing their staff and the residents of Cat Key in a universal testing program. And that got the concurrence of the Ministry of Health. And they asked, what can we do to assist? They had access to large amounts of testing supplies, and they donated in 2 batches. I think the first was 500, and the second one was maybe 1,000 or 500. I don't remember the exact numbers. But in those days, we were the busiest day in terms of positive cases was 6 a day, if you remember.
Yes.
And so to get 500 test kits, boy, we were.
You thought you were living in
the battle, because we could not procure these things on the open market. So when we had an offer for 5,000, then translated into 2,500 swabs, that would have allowed us to stay in the game for a considerable period of time. The Chinese government.
Go ahead. I wanted one more thing in my mind, going back to Cat Key. Because of course I was surprised that Cat Key had positive cases. I was like, okay, people live on Cat Key. This is great. I didn't even know. I need to visit one day. And we've had a few positive cases. Is Cat Key what is that life like on Cat Key? Is this purely a hotel or some sort of resort space that is privately owned, and we have foreigners coming in to work at this space? So I'm just trying to get an idea of Cat Key itself.
Well, Cat Key actually is the model that the Bahamas ought to embrace, and perhaps what we can do as the show moves on is to talk about the sweet spot for salvaging the economy of the Bahamas. But the idea is that if you want to run a resort for wealthy older persons, you need to make sure that resort, that enclave, is safe. And they wanted to test everybody that was on the island to determine whether or not Cat Key was free of COVID. This was early on. This was progressive thinking. And they did exactly that. And lo and behold, you test enough, you're going to find cases. But once you test and identify the individuals that are positive, you can then isolate them from the rest of the community and keep that community safe. That model is the model that we ought to be embracing.
If you're just tuning in, Dr. Duane Sands, former Minister of Health, here on the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Okay, Doc, I have a few questions, and this is the first time you're joining me since your resignation, and it definitely was one of those points in Bahamian history during this government's tenure that will be remembered. And recently in the news, and you've done a few shows, and it's not personal. I appreciate you doing mine, even though, I thought we were tight, but we digress. Just recently in an article, I think yesterday or last week, I can't remember when, it says that you were forced to resign in essence. Will you say that here on the show? How did this go about? Because I'm curious, Doc. I personally thought you seemed surprised.
I don't believe we broke any new ground.
I didn't think so either, but I'm curious.
There was an article that was published by Sharon Turner on the course of events around that particular time. And the idea was that I was asked to submit my resignation. The expectation was, or the idea was, it would not be accepted. We move on. Well, it didn't work out that way. And at the end of the day, I am no longer the Minister of Health. So yes, I was asked to write a letter of resignation.
And that letter of resignation is what you wrote. You wrote that. It was not written for you.
Well, that's where it gets complicated. There was a letter that was written for me that I did not sign because I had issues with that letter, and I asked for a review of that letter by the Honorable Attorney General, who similarly had issues with the content of the letter. And so I said, okay, the spirit, the idea is, okay, we have a problem. Let's craft something that is acceptable to all. Let me share it with my wife. Let me share it with the persons important to me, because this is clearly the resignation of a cabinet minister in the life of a country is not an insignificant event, and certainly not an insignificant event in my life. So in the process of editing this draft, the draft shows up on social media.
Oh, I remember that.
After we had agreed that I would submit another letter. Well, I didn't find that acceptable. I posted something on Facebook that said that that note was not legitimate. And I subsequently wrote an actual letter of resignation, which I hand-delivered to the Most Honorable Prime Minister. And I also posted it on Facebook.
Dr. Duane Sands in studio with us, or on the air with us. All right, Doc, with that said then, we have found ourselves continually, you know, there was regret, shenanigans, folks were still irate, and others said it was the honorable thing to do. Do you have any regrets with the handling of that situation?
No, in retrospect, you know, I had a wonderful experience as minister. It was a privilege to serve the people of the Bahamas. And, you know, the Almighty God works in mysterious ways. And I suspect that my time in that role, in that capacity, was up. I have said repeatedly, I don't know how I got into this to begin with, because I was a fairly unlikely candidate. But
for the Minister of Health?
For
politics. Okay.
I believe the practice of cardiac, thoracic, and vascular surgery. I was getting cussed by my patients left, right, and center. What you doing fooling around with this thing? You need to be in the hospital, blah, 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 blah. But there was a strong vocational pull to make a contribution at that level. And so after the convention of 2016, which was hotly contested, and my running mate and I ultimately withdrew from the race, I would have made a commitment to support Hubert Minnis as leader and Peter Turnquest as deputy leader. And I think my political activity since that time has demonstrated that that commitment was lived up to. I spent 3 years from May 2017 until May the 4th, 2020, doing the very best that I could do as the Minister of Health. And I believe that we accomplished some things, and there are some things that I wish we could have done a better job.
You know, I'll ask you this question, and as we pivot on the other side of the break, but I have to ask this question, Doc. Do you feel as if you were dealt with justly? Or was this, were you surprised even by the move to require your resignation?
You know, you have to accept in the Westminster system of government and in our Constitution, ministers serve at the pleasure of the Prime Minister. you are both appointed and disappointed by the Prime Minister. And that is the system that we have adopted. That's the system that we have constitutionally enshrined. I have no problem with that. And so at the end of the day, it's not for me to decide whether or not a decision was made the way I would have made it or done the way that I would have done it. It is entirely his prerogative to appoint or to disappoint individuals to serve in his cabinet. It speaks for itself. The public looks on. They will then opine as to whether or not this was a good thing to do, a reasonable thing to do. My role is to do the very best that I could do for the people and the Commonwealth of the Bahamas in whatever capacity I am honored and privileged to serve. And I believe that what I decided to do was to serve as Minister of Health. And then when I was no longer able to serve as Minister of Health, I now serve as a consultant surgeon, dealing with patients, and I am also the Member of Parliament for Elizabeth. And who knows what comes next? Who knows?
Who knows? Well, I'll tell you what is now, Doc. You are at present a backbencher. You sit in the same auspices as your good friend, who I'm sure you probably heckled, Frederick McAlpine, as your good friend, who I'm sure you probably heckled as well, Vaughn Miller or Reese Chipman, when you were a cabinet minister. You are now one of those. Well, of course, Reese and Vaughn are independents. But you are now a backbencher with others, quote, unquote, backbenchers. I want to know on the other side of the break, since you have gone into this mode, we have heard you be far more vocal in matters that, of course, as a cabinet minister, you could not speak out against or have any sort of dissenting view, even if in the end you would vote for it. And I find that quite interesting. And I wonder your take on those moves. You spoke about Abaco and the burial, bringing to light very important information, or well, just making us question the way that the numbers weren't balancing, right? They weren't reconciling numbers. You've spoken out on testing. You've spoken out on quite a bit of things. And I'm curious, now that you're a backbencher, are you ready? Are you seriously ready? And can people trust you to speak out, or is it just sour grapes? You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black. I meant to left that right there with sour grapes, Doc. We'll be back right after this. Dr. Duane Sands, former Minister of Health, Member of Parliament for Elizabeth. We'll be back. Tune in. You don't want to miss anything. We'll be back right after this.
When you retire, you should do it your way. Unlike an annuity, Royal Fidelity's personal retirement account puts you in the driver's seat with the flexibility to change with your lifestyle. You choose when, how much, and how often to receive your pension payments. Plus, you'll have access to the best performing investment funds in the market. That means your money keeps working even when you aren't. Retire your way with an RF personal retirement account. Call us today at 603-6000 to learn more. Royal Fidelity. Money at work.
Jen and Jason are prepping for the hurricane season at home. Is their insurance enough? They message their Massey United Insurance rep to have a chat. Recent renovations increased their property value. They were underinsured. Now their coverage is updated. Be Massey United Insurance ready this hurricane season. Call RMS Insurance Agents and Brokers at 698-7233. Shield Insurance Agents and Brokers at 356-7202 or Freeport Insurance Agents and Brokers at 352-8501 to learn more.
COVID-19. Do not panic. Be prepared. If you plan to travel, keep updated on travel advisories from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Be sure to wash your hands often and have travel-sized hand sanitizers and disinfecting wipes readily available. Keep your distance from persons who are coughing and sneezing. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. This can help protect you from COVID-19 infection and other respiratory diseases.
This message brought to you by Bahamas Ministry of Health in conjunction with Guardian Radio.
Girl, Junior just showed me Bella Boy in his phone.
What you mean? He take picture of that good for nothing boy?
Shh, you don't want Bella hair. You say that. You know she always say that's my good child.
So what he doing in Junior phone?
Oh, he there because the police looking for him. He on their wanted list.
Wanted persons in your phone now?
Yes, child. And when police want to find anybody quick, after something happen, they can send picture direct to your phone. Go to Google Play or App Store and search for Crack Crime Bahamas, then pick install and it will go straight to your phone.
There is also a section on missing persons.
Yes, girl. Everybody needs to get this app so police can tell us right away when these people go missing. Just like an alert system.
Yes, it has numbers for Crime Stoppers Bahamas, so you can call and nobody knows it's you. Call directly to Miami and give the information without giving your name or anything about you. I tried the other day, and when I hear Junior and his boys talking about where they hide those guns, I walk quick round the corner and call that number.
Call 328-8477 from Nassau or 242-300-8477 from the Family Islands.
Tired of banks forcing you to use technology to bank the way they want you to? Your convenience is important. So no matter what your banking needs, Commonwealth Bank's friendly staff are always available in branch for that personal one-on-one service. But when you choose technology, our online and mobile banking app offers you state-of-the-art functionality. The choice is yours. Commonwealth Bank. Bank the way you want.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Dr. Duane Sands on the show with us. You can follow us live on YouTube. And of course, you know, you can listen to, you're obviously listening to us live on Guardian 96.9 FM. You can download the Guardian app as well. Doc, we're getting text messages. People are sending messages via YouTube. I'll give you one right away. Good afternoon. Can you ask Dr. Sands if the reason why our recovery cases don't decrease or increase is because we don't follow, test the respective cases after the 2-week quarantine?
I think we have had an explosion of cases. If you recall, we had plateaued at 100, 101, 102, and then 104, and we were stuck there for quite a while. And then things fell apart, and we have gone from 104 to just under 1,000 in less than a month. So basically, you haven't reached the point where a number of people are even candidates for recovery. That means that their symptoms have abated, and that in the instance of 1 or 2 negative RT-PCR tests, they haven't had that yet. If you look at the number of hospitalized people, we're now up to 30-something hospitalized persons and climbing. And this is a real challenge on the healthcare system right now.
Okay, so I wanted to, sorry, keep going. Keep going, Doc.
We expect, unfortunately, to see, and you know, I'm not wishing ill on my people or my country, but it is probable that we're going to see additional deaths.
Why is it, we just recently had reported a 34-year-old who has succumbed to COVID-19. The concern is the profile of this virus changing based on what you're learning? I mean, 34 is pretty young. And also something else. Now, I have to remember that question on transparency, but answer that one for me, Doc.
So no, I mean, the virus disproportionately impacts older people, but also people with comorbidities. So the obese, the hypertensives, people with cancer, immune diseases, etc. And we know that the Bahamas has a disproportionate number of persons with comorbid illnesses. We are the poster child for chronic non-communicable diseases.
You know, I wonder, here's the thing. We have recently, and I think you know, if you watch these press conferences we've had for months, Bahamian's been very frustrated with the press conferences. I think one of the spaces where you are missed so much is in the way that you communicated some of these challenges. And there was candor to it. I mean, not everything we wanted answered, you answered, but we understand politics and politicians and whatnot, so forth and etc. One of the main challenges that we've been faced with, though, since your departure and in the most recent press conference with the COVID-19 task force and this national address with the Prime Minister, has been the lack of transparency for us journalists. Not us journalists, I'm not a journalist, so let me take that back. For journalists and those in media, where we are asking questions, we are getting more information through social media, where nurses and doctors feel as if they need to come out and say that we have insufficient PPEs, that we haven't, they're saying, well, we're having an issue with infections. Is this the norm, based on your experience as Minister of Health, the way information is being disseminated to the public?
Well, let me put it to you this way. I think that information is power, and information belongs to the people. And so where you feel as an administration that there is some tidbit, some data that the public either is unable to digest or that it's too sensitive to share, I think you're on a slippery slope. The data will be discovered, and oftentimes it is leaked by somebody who believes that it ought to be in the public space. Mm-hmm. But that said, I think that there was a pivot from the open, free exchange of information, answering tough questions shortly after I left the ministry. And I think that was a stylistic issue of the competent authority, who was then the acting Minister of Health. I think we need to go back to a period of openness, of transparency, share the information, promise to get the information, and when you promise to get it, you actually get it and give it out.
This is one of the things, because we're looking now at the statement of the 34-year-old, and a lot of questions arise from that. Was this 34-year-old, did he have pre-existing conditions? What sort of parameters that we can learn from this to help us understand how this virus is traveling, how we are contracting this disease? Is this one where they knew someone who traveled, or is this strictly now within the community? Information that we think is vital. But the challenges that we face, Dr. Sands, and if you're just tuning in, Dr. Duane Sands here, is that it seems as if we don't seem to have a clear handle on it, right? We are back to another lockdown. And I wanted to ask, did you think that the lockdown nationally was the right choice?
I think we had no choice now because of the unfettered communication spread, widespread community transmission or multiple clusters, and you had a situation that was out of control. Now, what do we do next? And it becomes critically important that the decision makers or decision maker is listening to a wide cross-section of progressive thinkers in the country, because this is not only about the cabinet of the Bahamas or the competent authority. This is about the survival of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And it requires that business people, taxi drivers, physicians, lawyers, businessmen, if I haven't said it already, ordinary men and women, clergy, all have the ability to be heard, that they're consulted, so that we frame a way forward that we can all live with, because things are going to be very tough for everyone over the next 3 to 6 months and probably longer.
You know, it's interesting. Sorry, continue.
You cannot simply say open wide, here's some bitter medicine, swallow it, suck it up, this is good for you, if you haven't had an opportunity to say, but What about this? What about that?
What would be the what about for you? When you look at this, what would be the what about?
I think that we are going to have to figure out a way to walk and chew gum at the same time. I believe that we need to brand the Bahamas as a COVID-safe destination and to reopen our economy in a way that adopts best practices, which means that we are going to have to test widely, that we are going to have to test visitors and workers, that we are enforcing the social distancing, that we are not allowing the types of indiscretions that we have seen and turned a blind eye to, that we make available the ability for people to conduct their self-hygiene, to make sure they have access to running water, to ensure that the people that are in nursing homes and prisons, etc., are not incubators for COVID-19. And I think we need to get our children back to school, face-to-face school.
Interesting, because someone actually had a text here. What are your thoughts on returning to school? What should we see happening from a medical viewpoint before children return to school? Anything that you would say that it should be required by the schools to do? And why is it important for face-to-face learning?
Because there are so many intangibles. Many of our children live in environments where they don't eat, where they're subjected to abuse, where their ability to get a head start in life is only maintained when they are in the school setting. And so school in the Bahamas is more than just a place to go for reading, writing, and arithmetic. School is actually an oasis of sorts that catapults or has the potential of catapulting our children from despair to opportunity.
But are there concerns about, are there medical concerns about kids catching the virus, being asymptomatic, but bringing it home? How do we mitigate against those concerns?
So this is the discussion that has been held all over the world. And if you look now at the discussions that have been published in the New England Journal, in the Lancet, by WHO, etc., there are some best practices in terms of how you social distance children. How do you ensure that they're washing their hands, that they are wearing masks if they are at the appropriate age, perhaps even visors and so on and so forth. But you are adopting an approach that says that yes, COVID-19 is bad, but the treatment for COVID-19 may be worse. Even if we look at, and I know that I have segued a little bit here, if we look at some of the economic policies, a number of our economic policies are going to lead to irrevocable failure of a huge number of small and medium-sized enterprises and some large enterprises. And so we've got to be very, very careful that what we do doesn't leave us holding a useless bag and subjects the people of the Bahamas to destitution for the next generation.
Doug, when you look at it, or when you speak of it, the question that comes to mind with this, and if you're just tuning in, Dr. Duane Sands joining us live on the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian 96.9 FM. The question that comes to mind when you talk about that, Doc, is that we now have to, are you saying we now have to, not that, let me don't ask it that way. How serious do you view COVID-19 to the health of the Bahamas? If we had capacity, if we weren't short, and that's a whole other story about how all of a sudden borders is a new story of concern, because I know you were talking about borders as an issue from June of 2019, but now it's a whole new concern in 2020. But as a whole, for the Bahamas. How do you view this virus? Because I remember when we first started, you know what you used to say to me, Nahaja, the flu kills more people. And I said to you then, and I was very adamant, Doc, well, this isn't the flu, right? And I know it isn't. But now I'm beginning to understand a wee bit about where you were coming from. Would you diminish COVID? No.
No, I think what we have watched has been the evolution of a new disease, first reported December 2019. Here we are 8 months later, and it has changed the world that we know. The world is now in the worst depression since the Great Depression, bypassing the collapse of 2008, 2009. You're watching every single G20 country have contraction of their economy, and it poses an existential threat to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, such that our national revenue has dropped by 50%, not my words, but the words of the Honorable K. Peter Turnquest, Minister of Finance, to the point where you have a handful of tourists coming in into the island, where we have, by directive, shut down internal commerce, where you have tens of thousands of people without food security, where you have a situation where the debt is piling up. And the question is going to be, apart from hope and prayer, what is going to sustain us? This is no longer an issue that we can rely on the ideas of any single individual or group of individuals. We are all in this together, whether we like it or not. This is no longer about, I don't like this one, I don't like that one. We are all tied together, and we either sink or swim together.
When we talk about now, at this point, Doc, the overall health concern of where we are, people are concerned about vaccines. People are wondering, and we have some concerns with, conspiracy theories. And it's a big thing. It's become a real thing where I'm not surprised by it. I always say that when there's a lack of transparency and when there is trust in leadership, we conjure up our own thinking and our own mindset. Before you left, we had Dr. Nakia Forbes, if I remember correctly, mention that we would possibly, move into or look at becoming a part of the trial for vaccines. When she joined me on my show, she was very explicit in saying that Bahamians, every human has their own free will. And if we were to do trials, that no one was going to be forced and no one can mandate a vaccine. But we're curious. I think Bahamians are very curious as to, should we be looking at being a part of a trial for vaccines? Should we trust the medical fraternity in making sure that we aren't guinea pigs? What are your thoughts on that?
Simple answer is yes. And so let's go back to vertical transmission of HIV, where Perry Gomez, as the leader of the HIV secretariat at the time, would have played an instrumental role in demonstrating that you could reduce the likelihood that a newborn child born to a mother infected with HIV would be born with HIV. That was a trial, it was a study, and it changed the thinking of the world. The Bahamas has led the way. If you look at Mercelin Dalregis's seminal work on congenital rubella, we have had moments of wonderful contributions to the world's understanding. And so here we are now with a novel illness, and the idea is whether or not the Bahamas should participate in ethical, randomized, prospective trials looking at solving a problem that has now infected more than 20 million people around the world and counting, and killed more than 750,000 people, 750,000 people around the world, and which is devastating the economy of the Bahamas. I say, absolutely. Let us look at all of the options to solve this problem and get away from this story that Bill Gates and Fauci got together with a 5G platform so they could sterilize Black people and take over the world. That is nonsense. It's absolute rubbish.
That's a next level conspiracy theory, Doc. I must say.
I think I covered most of them in that one, right?
No, you actually did pretty good. Uh, I really think that's the next level of conspiracy theories. Bill Gates, Fauci, 5G. I'm in, oh, and I have to ask you this one because this is now circulating and I wanted to get your medical theory on this. There's some things traveling saying make this make sense. If COVID-19 is so contagious, if it is so contagious where we can, it remains on a surface, droplets can easily come out, why does the swab have to go all the way up your nasal passage? Are they putting this? I'm not interested in they're putting chips in my brain part, but I actually thought, well, yeah, what is the science on that anyway? Why does that swab have to go way up there if it's so contagious? Why can't we swab in the cheeks?
So the RT-PCR test is a very sensitive test, meaning that it picks up true positives, provided that you get an adequate specimen. Now, people shed more virus from the back of the throat, the nasopharynx. But interestingly, that RT-PCR nasal swab is usually only able to pick up virus about 70% of the time. So there are now tests that you can do on saliva that is better tolerated. But the RT-PCR nasal swab, as of today, remains the best test. There is some forward movement with antigen testing, not to be confused with antibody testing. That will probably make it a little bit easier. And as we get better technology to determine who is COVID positive and who is not COVID positive, it will become a lot easier, faster, cheaper to battle this disease. And that is independent of whether you use hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, remdesivir, or any other therapies, Decadron.
I've heard of zinc, yeah.
There are a lot of things, and we have used hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin in the Bahamas. And as the science has evolved, I believe that we've moved away from them because the data is simply not there. We would like to be able to get access to remdesivir because...
And that's the trial drug, correct?
Right. And Gilead, their home is Grand Bahama. So if you look at...
Really?
Yes. If you look at where most of their products are made, they're made in Grand Bahama. And
so now the conspiracy theorists will say that now as you said that, Doc, I'm hearing them in my head. That's why Grand Bahama's numbers aren't going down. They're getting infected. I can hear conspiracy theorists already here.
Well, I mean, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And
I know that.
If you are going to pay attention to the conspiracy theorists, it makes for fascinating television, but it doesn't solve real problems. Understand that we have lost officially 15 Bahamians. We have some 945, I believe, confirmed infections. We have 30 healthcare workers infected, hundreds of people in quarantine, businesses shut down, people not knowing where the next meal is going to come from. We don't have time for this kind of rubbish.
Let me ask you.
What we need to do is focus on the facts.
Let me ask you this, Doc. Today, breaking news. Right before I came on the air, shortly before 4 o'clock, before I came on the air, and I'll share it with on the screen with you, the announcement that the office of the Prime Minister has been closed, right? Closure of Cecil Wallace Whitfield Center. Says the Cabinet Office announces for general information that the Cecil Wallace Whitfield Center, which houses the office of the Prime Minister, the Ministry of Finance and their agencies, has been closed for cleaning and sanitization following exposure to COVID-19. The Ministry of Health Surveillance Unit has initiated contact tracing to determine the level of exposure to employees and visitors at the CWW Center. At this point, there has been no confirmation that the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, have been exposed. Out of an abundance of caution, the Prime Minister and the DPM will voluntarily enter into self-quarantine until further instructions from the Ministry of Health. Other employees of the successful Wallace Whitfield Center are encouraged to self-quarantine until further instructions are issued by the Ministry of Health. One of the things that I saw there was encouraged to quarantine. Should quarantining be mandatory for all employees at this point? Or no?
No, I think that this is where a robust, rapid assessment of risk, it becomes critically important, because you still have to run a country. You still have to pay bills. You still need to pay employees. You still need to make sure that the light is on. And I'm not trying to make any jokes about BPL, okay?
Yeah,
the issue is that even as we want to be safe, there are essential services that need to continue. And you need to have a cohort of persons to continue that activity. So what I think we need now is to engage the public in a way that Winston Churchill engaged the people of Great Britain during World War II. As Franklin Delano Roosevelt engaged the people of the United States with his fireside chats. There has to be a situation where the people of the Bahamas now feel and trust the leadership of the country, and it becomes a matter of personal pride that I am washing my hands, that I am social distancing, that I am not out in the bar partying, that I am not flaunting the regulations, because I understand them, I believe in them, and as an act of patriotism, I am going to not only carry them out, but I'm going to insist that all of the people around me, my family, my friends, the people that I come into contact with, do the same thing. It is about country. It is about the survival of this country.
Listen, I appreciate you so much, and I hate that we have to go. It's 6 o'clock, and who knew it would come that fast? Dr. Duane Sands, former Minister of Health, and now that I know he's still a friend, I hope he'll return soon. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Everyone have a great day. We will see you tomorrow, same time, same place.
Thank you. Good night.